Good day everyone, my name is Michelle Laurente Astudillo and today I'm going to discuss to you about the deterministic effects of radiation in which we're going to focus about human genome. So, cells are the fundamental working units of every living system. We all know that our body is composed of cells. All the instructions needed to direct their activities are contained within the chemical DNA strands. DNA from all organisms is made up of the same chemical and physical components. The DNA sequence is the particular side-by-side arrangement of the bases along the DNA strand. This order spells out the exact instructions required to create a particular organism with its own unique traits. DNA also in the human genome is arranged into 23 distinct chromosomes. So let's talk about the human responses to ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation can disrupt chemical bonds of DNA by breaking the bonds. So as you can see, this picture, this 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 side is the causes of the destruction of ionizing radiation. A direct effect would be a disruption or break and occur directly in the molecular structure such as the bond between base pairs. So, ang epekto ng ionizing radiation into our DNA sa double helix natin, masisira yung isang side in which mag-cause siya ng pagkasira, ng pag-function ng DNA natin. So, this damage could be properly repaired by cellular mechanisms. Only this cellular mechanisms can properly repaired. Improperly repaired causing a genetic mutation, or it could result in the death of the cell. So, by the way, what is genetic mutation? Genetic mutation is a change in one or more genes. So, what happens when there is a genetic mutation? So, when there is a genetic mutation, the nucleotides are in the wrong order, which means the coded instructions are wrong and faulty proteins are made or control switches are changed. The body can't function as it should. Mutation can be inherited from one or both parents. So, the three acute radiation syndrome. So, ito yung what we call it one, nafo-focus na sirain ng radiation syndrome. We have red blood cells, bone cell, and muscle cells. So, exposure of the whole body to a large dose over a short period of time may cause effects due to the sensitivity of cells in the body. The first syndrome, we have hematopoietic syndrome, in which this kind of syndrome focuses to break or to attack our red blood cells. There will be observable decreases in blood cell count at doses of about 100 radiation. And next we have gastrointestinal syndrome. This types of this kind of syndrome also focuses to destruct our bone cell. A dose of about 500 radiation will result in nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, and etc. And next we have central nervous system syndrome, or CNS. This types of syndrome focuses to break or to damage our muscle cell. A dose of about 2,000 radiation will affect the muscle and brain function of the central nervous system. So those are the three types of syndrome: the hematopoietic, gastrointestinal, and central nervous system syndrome. Next, we have stages of acute radiation lethality. we have prodromal syndrome. This prodromal syndrome consists of acute clinical symptoms that occur within hours of the exposure and continue for up to a day or two. So, this syndrome, umaabot siya ng isang araw or two. The immediate responses of radiation sickness is the prodromal period. The symptoms could last for a few hours or few days. So, another term also prodromal syndrome or prodromal period, it is a period between the incubation and the illness period of a disease. So, mawawala tong syndrome na to or yung symptoms in just a few hours or few days. Unlike the Latin period, this Latin period period of time that the subject is free from the visible effect of radiation. Latin period also can last from hours to weeks. So, unlike the prodromal syndrome, mas maaga siyang maagapan. Mas maagang mawala yung symptoms. Unlike the Latin period, it could last from hours to weeks. So, prodromal period or prodromal syndrome also, it is not a diagnosis, but the technical term used by mental health professionals due to a professional to describe a specific group of symptoms that may precede the onset of a mental illness. For example, a fever is prodromal to measles, which means that a fever may be a risk factor for developing this illness. So, define LD50 or 60. The dose which is lethal to 50% of the people within 60 days is called the LD50 over 60. And the LD50 over 60 dose is approximately 400 radiation to 400 CGY. The actual lethal dose varies depending on the health of the individual and whether or not medical intervention is available. So, some local tissue damage after high-dose irradiation. First, we have stochastic, random. Stochastic health effects that occur randomly and for which the probability of the effect occurring rather than its severity is assumed to be a linear function of dose without threshold. Hereditary effects cancer incidence are examples of stochastic effects. So, the effects of this is cancer incidence. Next, we have deterministic, the non-stochastic. Deterministic, it is a health effects, the severity of which varies with the dose and for which a threshold is believed to exist. The severity of these effects, rather than probability, increase with dose. Examples of these effects are erythema or skin reddening, cataract to lens of the eye, sterility, temporary or permanent, and epilation, loss of hair. Yung balat mo parang something like nangangate, and yung mata mo may cataract, yung parang puti na tumatabon sa mata natin, and also loss of hair, natatanggal yung mga buhok natin. So those are the some of effects of this deterministic. The dose required to cause these effects is increased if dose is protected or fractionated. So, biological effects, cancer. All cancer is genetic. It's triggered by altered genes. Genes controlling the replication of cells are damaged, allowing the cells to reproduce without restraint, restraint through thought all cancer is genetic. Only a portion is inherited, familial cancer. Cancer usually arises from a single cell mutation. Most most cancers come from random mutation that develop in the body cells during one's lifetime. Genetic tests also may be able to determine if a particular mutation is present, but finding it is not a guarantee that the disease will develop. So here are the types of effects of human body. Um, Consideration is to be given to whether any health effects arise after radiation exposure and what effects, if any, the amount of radiation, parts exposed to radiation, whole body exposure or local exposure. And exposure modes acute, chronic, or fractionated exposure. So, um, yung mga epekto ng radiation na mararamdaman mo sa sarili mo or sa katawan mo, it also depend on kung gaano nakalala yung epekto ng radiation sa katawan mo. So you cannot determine easily the damage of the radiations into your body since di mo alam kung gaano nakalala yung epekto ng radiation sa katawan mo. So, deterministic effects. Acute disorders. Symptoms appear within several weeks. Actively dividing cells are affected. So, these types of orders, acute orders, acute radiation syndrome, skin erythema, hair loss, sterility, and etc. And also, these syndromes, acute radiation, mostly the focuses of this is bone marrow disorders, gastrointestinal tract disorder, and central nervous system disorder. So, ito yung mga parte sa katawan mo that yung na-eepektuhan ng radiation. And another also is fatal disorder, in which under this fatal disorder is the embryo fatal disorders or mental retardation and etc. And another one, the late onset disorder. Symptoms appear after the lapse of several months to several years or more. Under of these types of disorder is the cataract, glaucoma, leukemia, cancer. So you will feel this disease, the cataract, the leukemia, if you have a late onset disorders. And last one, we have the hereditary effects. It increase in incidence of ordinary hereditary disorder. So it is part of the stochastic effects. Assuming that there is no threshold value. So here are the some radiation effect in our body. Mostly nasisira or the most common na inaatake or naaapektuhan ng katawan natin ng radiation is our eyes. Our eyes is a very important part of our body. Eyes as a high dose can trigger cataract months later. That's why we have some of us mostly when we get older, our eyes already has a cataract. Our thyroid hormone glands vulnerable to cancer. Radioactive iodine builds up in thyroid. Children most at rest. So, naapektuhan din yung thyroid natin. And next, also we have lungs. lungs vulnerable to DNA damage when radioactive material is breathed in. So it is mostly important also in our body. So next, with stomach. Stomach vulnerable in radioactive material is swallowed. And in reproductive organs also, in high doses can cause sterility. And also in our skin, like what I've what I've say a while ago. I mean, um, yung na-irritate, something like na-irritate yung skin natin. Skin high doses cause redness and burning. And our bone marrow also. Bone marrow produces red and white blood cells. Radiation can lead to leukemia and other immune system disease. So, when our bone marrow is already affected, um, our red and white blood cells is also affected as well. So, in which it will lead to us to be positive on leukemia and other immune system disease like um immune system disease like if you're familiar with autoimmune disorder disease or autoimmune disorder, that's one of the causes of when our bone marrow has already a disease or something na damaged na siya. So, be careful with our body parts. So, radiation exposure. There are many effects of radiation in our body. So, all we have to do is um, just take care of our body to avoid sickness or any kind of disease or cancer. So, that's all. So we have summary. Ionizing radiation has biological effects. The biological effects from ionizing radiation are not unique to radiation because ionizing radiation has biological effects. It is important to limit the amount of radiation received by a person. So take note by that we have to limit